sons of prostitutes. How do you feel about your mother's profession? Story 1. I never thought the day would come when others would talk about this. I'm the son of a prostitute, and I literally saw it all while growing up. I remember being left in a clandestine house, and my mother telling me she'd be back in a few hours. I never imagined she wouldn't return for days. I clearly remember eating Oreos for days until I grew to hate them. For some strange reason, I had a strong mother-son bond with her, even though she put me through the hardest times, and that bond never truly faded. I haven't seen her in about 10 years due to various prison transfers, and despite all the atrocities I witnessed because of her, I still feel sorry for her and love her just as I did when I was little. Honestly, I no longer hold any resentment for her actions. I've completely forgiven her. Story 2. You're a better person than I am. My biological mother was a prostitute. I was left in countless clandestine houses with strangers, family under state custody, and in group homes. The biggest difference for me compared to most is that for a few years, she took me to work with her until I was about 6, and unfortunately, I have very clear memories. I've woken up more times than I can count to different noises in the next room. I've also made many trips to abortion clinics. I'm pretty sure I'm a product of those acts, since my father was never mentioned. Now I'm 36, and the only upside to all this is that I'm untouchable. The amount of things I've lived through and dealt with physically and emotionally has made me so resilient that nothing that happens now even phases me. Otherwise, she doesn't matter much to me anymore, and truthfully, I don't care where she is or how she's doing. I've blocked her a few times on Facebook when she makes new accounts. We haven't spoken in over 10 years, and that's fine with me. Story 3. Can I ask if you're angry with her for putting you through all that? Or is it for other reasons? I'm not angry with her. I'm simply not interested in her life. In my teens, I was, and I'm sure it had to do with my childhood, but I didn't connect the dots at the time. Now, in my 30s, I've moved past it. I spent 12 years in the military, then started my own business. I met a woman I can finally trust, with whom I had 2 children. Though I don't tell my kids about the events of the past, I explain to them that no matter how bad they think things are, for example, when I take away their internet, things can be much worse. I try to use my experiences to teach them. If you don't mind, I'd like to share a brief reflection on forgiveness. Forgiveness is a selfish act. A good kind of selfishness, like eating well and exercising, because you selfishly want to feel better. Forgiveness is the most powerful thing you can do to take control of any toxic remnants in your life left by others' mistakes. The moment you forgive someone is when you take control of your problems. It's a declaration of responsibility. You can no longer blame another person for the issues they caused you. Now everything depends on you, and that's when personal growth, healing, and evolution begin. We often cling to our pain because we don't want to face and deal with it. We attribute that wound to someone else and refuse to take responsibility for it. So our pain lingers. It can cause all sorts of toxic problems in your life, depending on the severity. Forgiving someone for the horrible things they've done to you means you take ownership of the damage and can process it on your own terms. Forgiving doesn't mean you have to be kind or friendly with the person who hurt you. It would be wise to forgive someone and keep your distance, but forgiveness is the first step to reclaiming control over what others have done to you. Story 4. My mother was a porn star in the 70s and 80s, made several films with Ron Jeremy and the like. It was always a taboo topic while growing up, but my dad tried to prepare us so my brothers and I wouldn't be bothered at school, since the town knew what my mom did. There were no issues. If you still had a good, safe childhood despite everything, never let anyone ridicule you for it ever. Well, apparently I was left with childhood trauma because of her, according to my dad. I don't remember it, since they divorced when I was 6. I have very few memories of my mother. Everything turned out fine, in quotes, but I often wonder if being gay had anything to do with her, since I was hypersexual during my adolescence. Epigenetics is fascinating. Story 5. My mother didn't work the streets, but she did sleep with men when we needed money or food. The truth is, she hid it very well. I always thought those men were kind and just giving us money to help. Now that I look back, it all makes sense. She left us 10 years ago, and I'm grateful for everything she did. I'm sorry for your loss. It sounds like she did everything she could for the family to get by. I'm glad you're at peace with it. Story 6. I'm the bastard son of a Thai prostitute. I have no idea who my real father was, but luckily one of my mother's clients fell in love with her, married her, and adopted me. When things got ugly, the man got custody of me and pulled me out of that hell. He was a terrible father over the years, but I'll always thank him for getting me to where I am now. I'm a father myself now, and I make sure I never repeat the same mistakes. Story 7. I don't see anything wrong with it. My issues with my parents stem from them as people, not from my mother's profession. Mine was one in the past, before I was born. She never hid the fact that she was a prostitute. When I was old enough to understand what prostitution was, it didn't change anything for me. She's still my mother who sacrificed everything to keep me well fed. I still love her with all my heart. That's a beautiful response. I'm glad you were able to have a relationship where you could talk about things, and it wasn't a big, uncomfortable secret. You sound like a great family. Story 8. My mother worked prostitution in the Dallas area in the 90s. I spent most of my time with her, going from place to place and watching it all unfold. I carried a small backpack with a NASCAR VHS, some action figures, and a few toy cars, and everything seemed okay, even though I knew it wasn't normal for others. It was a very strange childhood, but I loved, and still love, my mother deeply. We had a strange mother-son bond, and I don't know if it was weird, but as a kid I always knew Mom would be there. She usually brought me Happy Meals the next day, and that was really cool. I had to deal with things in my teens when I learned about the subject and other stuff, since people made "your mom" jokes, and that was always hard to handle. I still hold my mother in high regard because I feel she did everything she could. I'm now in therapy to work through that and other childhood traumas, and it's going well. Story 9. In my case, I'm pretty angry, honestly, and not for the typical reasons. My father was my mother's pimp, and I have no idea if he was my biological father. It would really bother me if he wasn't, since it hurt when we lost him. My sisters and I had to sit in my dad's car while he followed my mom around the city to her clients' houses, or we just sat next to the client's car while they did whatever. Sometimes she took a long time to come out, and when she finally did, she sometimes looked really bad. My dad did nothing about it. He just drove to the street corner where she worked, picked her up, took the money, and dropped her off again. It was a completely horrible life for all of us, except my dad, who profited off my mother's body. Story 10. I made this account just to answer this great question. It'll be a bit long, but I promise it'll all make sense. I spent a lot of time moving from place to place as a kid with my mom and dad. My father was in and out of jail for various crimes. My mother never had a job and went from boyfriend to boyfriend. I don't remember much from my life before age 10, except the abuse. My mom eventually met a man who took care of her and was very kind to my siblings and me. We were left at my maternal grandparents' house for nearly a year. While living there, we were abused for no apparent reason. I was 10, my sister 9, and my autistic brother 8. We thought it was pretty normal behavior since abuse was all we'd ever known, so we never mentioned it to my mom or her boyfriend. Around Christmas, my mom and her boyfriend planned to visit and spend time with us. That year I got a pair of socks for Christmas, and obviously nothing from the grandparents. When we were alone with my mom and her boyfriend, the topic of the beatings came up. Then there was a screaming fight between the grandparents and them. My mom and her boyfriend immediately took us from the grandparents' house with nothing but our pajamas. The next day, my mom's boyfriend took us shopping for clothes and bought us everything we wanted. He took us to places like Krusty Burger, pools, restaurants, and all kinds of fun things almost every day. Around age 11, I started to understand why we were kept out of the house so often. It was essentially a brothel. I was never a dumb kid, but I was always quiet and kept everything to myself. I didn't realize my mother was also one of the prostitutes working there until one day I had no choice but to stay home and hear her working in the next room. This life continued through my high school years. Her boyfriend and she eventually broke up. My brother was sent to live with a family specialized in caring for autistic children, and my sister stayed with us. My mom went back to jumping from boyfriend to boyfriend but kept working. What surprised me most throughout all this was that her ex-boyfriend, the pimp, decided to keep looking after my sister and me, and despite everything, he was always there when no one else was. He always gave me money if I needed it, advice when things got tough, and the family support I always needed. He definitely wasn't the typical pimp. Fast forward a few years. My mom has fallen into alcoholism and still works. She's living with my stepdad. That's what she calls him now, and me. I've become a pretty big guy at this point, and whenever she had a problematic client, they'd call me to kick him out, which was always pretty weird. But I didn't mind, since I have a huge trigger when it comes to violence against women, and I won't tolerate it at all. My biological father has become a paranoid schizophrenic, and for some reason he started spending time with me because now that I'm a man and not a child who needed a father, he can relate to me. We eventually fought over everything he'd done, and because he was never there. I haven't spoken to him in years. Now I'm approaching 30, with no contact with either of my biological parents. I just got a house with my girlfriend, and her family treats me with a lot of love. I still see my stepdad, the former pimp, every week and talk to him all the time. He's older now and can no longer run the business. I help him financially or with chores whenever I can, and I have no problem with it. This pimp is the best father I could have asked for. In short, Mom slept with men in the next room, and I had to kick them out when I got older. She was never there for me and cared more about parties and alcohol. I ended up bonding with her pimp at the time, and he became the person I care about most in this world. My father. I don't want to cry,